Hello everybody and welcome to the Online Sociologist. I'm Ryan. In this video, we're continuing our deep dive into the work of the German sociologist Georg Simmel, using the 1950 collection, The Sociology of Georg Simmel, which was edited and translated by Kurt Wolff. Today, we're going to move into the second half of Chapter 2 entitled The Social and Individual Level. But if you're enjoying seeing how Simmel unpacks the mechanics of social life, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. In the last video, we saw how Simmel treats social life as a field of tension between the group and the individual, the old and the new, and similarity and difference. None of these opposites cancel each other out. Instead, their pull gives society its structure. Here, Simmel takes that idea further. He argues that when individuals form a mass, the shared level of life doesn't rise to an average. Instead, it sinks to the lowest point that still includes everyone. And it stops from falling further only because something higher resists the pull. As he puts it, quote, "What is common to all can be the property of only those who possess the least." In other words, if everyone must participate, the bar has to be low enough for everyone to reach. It's not about laziness or malice. It's structural. What unites people is rarely what elevates them. Now, you can see this logic in public communication. The larger the audience, the simpler the message. Campaign slogans like "Make America Great Again," "Black Lives Matter," or "Yes, we can" don't explain, instead they include. They take complex issues and distill them into emotional signals that anyone can grasp in seconds. That's what allows a message to spread fast, unify strangers, and mobilize a crowd. Simmel says the same process shapes how groups think and act. The mass tends towards simplicity and radicalism. The idea that gathers everyone has to be blunt, easy to repeat, and emotionally charged. It cuts through complexity not by resolving it, but by ignoring it. But here, Simmel adds an important balance. He notes that, quote, "the higher elements, or people with moral depth or intellectual seriousness, push back against this descent. They don't stop the crowd from simplifying, but they prevent it from collapsing completely." And you see this in everyday life. A journalist refuses to write clickbait, even if it draws readers in. A teacher won't change a grade to appease parents. A coach benches a star player who breaks the rules. These small acts of resistance hold the line and keep the group from sinking all the way to impulse. But when that resistance weakens, or when people stop thinking as individuals, something else takes over. And Simmel calls this the negative virtue of the mass. Because the crowd doesn't wrestle with competing thoughts. It moves straight ahead. That gives it a kind of clarity, a collective will that feels decisive and pure. But that same clarity lacks reflection. When individuals dissolve into the group, conscience and hesitation fade. And what remains is decision without deliberation, and action without accountability. And this change doesn't just affect how the group thinks, it shapes how it feels. When self-awareness drops, emotions spread quickly. Laughter, panic, excitement, all ripple outward faster than reason can catch them. Crowds don't just simplify thought, they amplify feeling. For Simmel, this is why the mass is never simply the sum of its parts. What appears in the crowd is only a fragment of each person, the lowest and most universal layer that everyone shares. Collective life runs on fragments, and in doing so, it loses the subtleties, the creativity, and the reflection that give individuality its depth. To illustrate, Simmel points to history. From ancient Athens to modern Europe, thinkers from Solon to Frederick the Great noticed the same thing. Wise individuals become shallow in groups and councils. Even highly educated parliaments or unions once gathered acted like emotional crowds. The more inclusive the group, the thinner the shared thought. It should be noted that Simmel wasn't the only one concerned about this sort of herd mentality at this time. Friedrich Nietzsche warned about the moral flattening of the crowd. Gustave Le Bon studied its contagious emotions. Even the sociologist Emile Durkheim, in a different way, showed how collective forces shape individuals without them realizing it. Simmel builds on this tradition but adds nuance. He doesn't romanticize isolation or condemn the group outright. Instead, he calls this dynamic the sociological tragedy. He notes the more refined a person becomes, or the more thoughtful, creative, or moral, the harder it is to fully belong to collective life. To fit in, they must either hold back or simplify themselves. Yet, if they withdraw completely, they lose connection to the social world that gives meaning to their refinement. And Simmel warns against mistaking withdrawal for strength. Sometimes people step away from groups not because they're noble, but because they're afraid of testing their individuality against the rough edges of collective life. True strength for Simmel lies in staying within society and refusing to lower yourself, even when the pull downward is strong. So, let's pull back and recap. When people come together as a mass, what emerges isn't their full selves, but only what they share in common. That creates unity, but it's also flattening. Complexity and conscience fade, replaced by simplicity and emotional power. Yet the group never fully collapses because some individuals resist the pull, holding it to a higher standard. Still, as individuals deepen, they often find less room to belong. This is Simmel's sociological tragedy. And why does this matter? Because once you see that rhythm, the pull downward, the pushback upward, the tension between the group and the individual, you start to see collective life differently. Here you see why slogans beat essays, why organizations standardize, and why it still takes one person in the right moment to hold the line. And remember, for Simmel, sociology isn't a manifesto, it's a lens. It helps us see how the form of being together shapes who we can be. All right, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, or critiques, let me know below. And if you want to keep exploring Simmel's thoughts, make sure to like and subscribe. I want to thank you all for watching. Goodbye.